Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for tuning into the Cloud Native FM podcast. This is your co-host for this show. My name is Saim Safdar, and you're watching episode 119. So it's been a very long journey for this YouTube channel. I hope in the future it could grow a bigger one, and it deserves the attention that it actually deserves. But let's speak through some of the agenda today. We are talking about in today's episode is people, processes, power, performance with platform engineering. By 2026, according to Gartner, 80% of the large organized software engineering organization will establish platform engineering team as internal provider of reusable services, components and tools for application delivery, up from 45% in 2022. So I want to understand and I want to get a deeper insight of what causing this sudden flux of interest, what companies can value and envision from, and what could go wrong with platform engineering hype. And I have a very special guest of long-time friend of mine, Steve Fenton. He works in Octopus Deploy, and Steve Fenton is an Octonaut and Octopus Deploy and a Dora community guide and a 7-time Microsoft MVP with more than 2 decades of experience in software delivery. He has written books on TypeScript, Appress, InfoQ, Octopus Deploy, and web operation. Steve has worked in the role of software engineering, SDET, development manager, and director of product and data in a range of startups, SMEs, and enterprises. So I have the best guest who will talk us through about everything that relates to platform engineering. So without any further delay, over to you now, Steve.
Hi, thanks for inviting me along to have a chat today. One of the interesting things that I'm working on at the moment as part of my job is lots of research. And Saim and I actually kicked off some research into platform engineering by interviewing people that are adopting it right now. And we turned that into a questionnaire, which then led into a survey, which we did through an independent market research company. So research is kind of like a big thing for me. And I'm also involved in the State of GitOps survey, which is currently active now as well. So lots of research going on. That means lots of really interesting insights, some of which are surprising, as they always are. So like you never get the data that you expect. You always get surprises. But that's kind of how we learn. So it's super exciting. So yeah, lots of what I'm doing at the moment is trying to find out what makes these things tick.
Absolutely. And guys, if I will share the link as well, Steve actually did a DevOps report of 2023 in Continuous Delivery Foundation. That I will definitely check it out as well. So there are some very concrete data that can give us insight of where we actually were heading. So Steve, can you little bit about Octopus? Can you tell us, my audience, little bit about of Octopus, what currently in the horizon, and a bit of introductory sentences around what Octopus is doing in the continuous delivery space?
Sure. So Octopus is automating all of your different deployments. So that's Kubernetes and containers, or whether you've got some heritage applications that you need to deploy. We deploy all of those things, and you can see what's happening in one place. We also have some quite cool features around like day 2 operations. And one of the things that I've always used Octopus for, because I was an Octopus customer before I came and worked here, was using these run books to give self-service capabilities to people. So instead of the test team needing to come and ask us to do something like clear out a cache or reset some data or restart some service, we could give them push button operations, which meant we didn't need to process tickets anymore. They could just log in and self-serve those things, which saved us a huge amount of time. And it also meant that no one was logging in and accidentally running the wrong command or doing something that was going to cause a side effect to trying to help out that team. So it made things a lot safer, and it made things a lot easier. So yeah, it's kind of automation on all the things. And also now the Octopus family includes Codefresh, and they're a big contributor to the Argo CD project. So we have that now as part of our extended family of what we offer. And the Codefresh folks are really smart and they really understand Kubernetes deployments at a really deep level. So I've been learning loads from them as well.
Absolutely. And I think Octopus Deploy has been for a very long time. And I think in my past companies in 2019, 2018, we have been using in our some of the product as well. So I have been some deeper understanding of it as well. So that's a very good thing. And guys, there's a link available on your screen right now. You can go into the octopusdeploy.com and see all the valuable insight in there. So I think me and Steve also working to some time with platform engineering for the platform working group at the CNCF as well. So their guys wrote a first paper, I think back in 2022, at the end of 2024. That's called Platform Definition White Paper. Last year they did the platform engineering maturity model. Right now they're investing time on the platform as a product and doing research and all these kind of stuff. So can you give us a quick and very high level intro of what the platform working group is and what their intention is going through right now currently?
Sure. So the platform working group, which is a whole bunch of smart people from lots of different organizations who are coming together through the CNCF, they have created, it's a really great document called the Platform Maturity Model. And it speaks into platform engineering, but it also speaks into like the broader definition of platforms as well. So from team topologies, where we're talking about a platform team there, the platform maturity model really speaks into all of that. But obviously platform engineering being such a hot topic, that's what we're thinking about quite a lot. And at the moment, one of the things the working group is doing is trying to create an assessment to help people find where they are on the map in terms of that model. And hopefully that assessment will also suggest things you can do to improve your platform capability. So it's a super interesting discussion. It's probably going to take us some time to work out the best approach for this, but there's already been some really great work on it, and it's quite exciting to see that take shape. That's probably the key thing that we're working on in that working group at the moment, although there is lots of other activity as well. So I don't want to undersell the breadth of what's happening in that community. So yeah, it's really good.
Absolutely. And I think if you want to spend time with Steve more, so Platform Working Group is a place where you can spend time more with us as well on that front as well. But I will add all the links in our YouTube channel so people can actually watch and see the things we're actually just describing right now. But let's go into the very nitty gritty of what the topic today. The topic is people, processes, power, and performance with platform engineering. So first question for myself, and I want to know a little bit about more on this subject, is how important is to have a cross-functional team in platform engineering? Basically the team needs to be deliverable with minimal dependencies or something what you actually come across quite recently with some of the community interaction and some of the customer interactions. So over to you now, Steve.
Yeah, I think probably the key point is that teams building these internal developer platforms have to be quite self-sufficient. And that doesn't just mean they need to have all of the technical skills to build a platform, which is complex enough in its own right, which is why they're needed. It also means they kind of need to be their own advocates within their organization, people to use the platform. That requires operating at both ends. You need to be listening to the developers to hear what their problems are so that you can make sure that your platform is solving those problems. But once you've actually achieved that with a group of developers, you need to then go out and tell everyone else who's not using the platform, share the success stories and demonstrate the benefits that people are going to get. So you need to be quite a broad mini organization because no one is going to go and promote the platform for you. And if you have really low adoption rates, you could have a brilliant platform solving a great problem for like a couple of teams, but it's not making the impact that it could in your company. So That's the breadth of it. It's quite a big task.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's a kind of a similar debate we back in the past, like for the cloud, when the cloud computing become a big thing, is like everybody's saying is cloud is for most of the organization. If you want to do automation, make sure there are very smaller, simpler manual step. You can't actually pollute manual and automation in the same pipeline. Something are button click, something are auto, and that's make you very fury. Like where the hell is going on? Is it the manual that causing the error, or is it automation that causes the error as well? So that's the same thing with because some teams are automation phase, some are not automation phase. They're doing some manual stuff. So there's a big things. I think this is a very research oriented topic as this one. And I think right now, remember back in the when the year started, we connected, and thankfully so we spent time on some of the surveys inside. We collected some information in the internet, what the people feel like it. Can you share some insight, like because we have been going through this cycle for a very long time earlier this month, and you are writing some new stack article as well, and I will include the link what I'm actually talking about so people can see when we actually added a when you wrote a blog post, you included the link for the people to submit what they are feeling, what they actually been implementing in their organization. We have some data now, so can you speak through with some data, like what you have actually initially found with some of the responses you got?
Yeah, I definitely can. I mean, one of the interesting insights we found, and I'll share a graph here in a second, just to kind of show you what's happening. There's an interesting relationship between the success of platforms in terms of whether they're achieving the goals that caused them to be started as a project in the first place. There's a relationship between the number of features and success, but the relationship isn't just add more and more features. It's a bit more insightful than that. So I have a graph here. It's a box and whisker chart, which may make some folks uncomfortable because it's a bit of an unusual chart, but it's a chart that I hope in software delivery we can get more used to, because it shows you not just averages and medians, but also like the edges of your data, which is super interesting. So if you're looking at things like time to restore service, rather than showing an average, which makes outliers disappear, using a scatter plot or a box and whisker can be really interesting. So I have a box and whisker chart here, and you can see that in general, as you add more features, your platform is more successful. So 2 features, and a feature is something like helping teams achieve their builds or helping teams achieve their deployments. It's that level of granularity. 2 features isn't enough. And on average, if you have around 6 features, that's when you're going to be hitting more goals. But the interesting thing about this being a box and whisker chart is that you can see the box on the right of this image, which shows the most successful platforms in the survey. Some of them managed to do it with just 3 features, whereas some of them are doing it with 9 features. And the interesting thing about that is if you are really careful to make sure that your features are precision targeting the pain that developers are having, you're going to be more successful. You can also see that some of the lower success platforms have 6 features, but are rated as like they're only meeting some of our goals. And that shows that you can't just throw features at users. They have to be relevant. And it's highly contextual, because if your development teams are very comfortable managing their own builds, giving them features around builds isn't going to solve any problem for them. It's just you're putting something in the way of them doing something they can already achieve. Whereas they may have a gap in monitoring and alerting or security scanning, in which case those features are going to have a high impact and will take you over to that higher success rate. So that was quite an interesting insight, is you would expect more features to be more useful, but I think we need to caveat that with they need to be the right features.
Awesome. Absolutely. Absolutely. Can you once again describe what is, because we have so many ways to represent the data. And can you tell a little bit about what what this data, because this is might be very new to the folks who have been actually quite new to this, all the stuff, how they actually represent the data. What is this all about? What is this format of the data? What the name of the format of the data? And just few words, how it's actually typically different from the way we show the spikes in the data from the, that's tell you exponentially grows or it exponentially declining.
Sure. So basically what we're seeing on this chart is on the height of these different box and whisker diagrams on here shows you the width of the sample. So and then the position shows you whether they're meeting none, which is on the left, no goals. Basically, the platform's a total failure. If they're meeting some goals, if they're meeting many goals, or if they're meeting all goals. As you look across the chart, you can see that as the number of features goes up, you tend to be moving more towards the successful end of platform engineering. But equally, the bits that are called whiskers, these little lines that come outside of the boxes, they show you kind of the edges of the data. So if we look at the most successful box, which is the one on the right, it's the darkest blue. In total, they have between 3 and 9 features. Most of them are in the tighter range where it's kind of 5, 6, or 7 features. So the box shows you where half the data exists. And on average, they have 6 features. So the line through the middle is the average. That's why these charts can be quite useful, because they show you like the minimum, the maximum, the average, where 50% of the data is on the chart. So it's that's why I've used this to try and understand the data. Now, when we turn this into a report, we will most likely have to convert this into a more friendly chart where we'll probably show the averages, but we'll try and indicate, because we really want to get the message across that just by adding more features, you won't become more successful without them being really well aligned to what the development team needs. That's the danger of averages here, is that a team who are failing will just add more features in the hope of getting into that high performance zone. And that won't work. You have to speak to the developers.
Yes, absolutely. And I think for the averages, they're kind of a dangerous sometime, particularly because you are actually just looking at the very concentrated data set point, and you're not looking at the overall picture of what this data actually represents. So this look very obvious to me. By looking at it, it's telling me the outliers, averages, and it's telling me the overall picture as well. So what I'm getting from the whole conversation is, by adding more and more feature in the platform, you are heading toward the some of the successes your actually team are actually expecting from your platform as well. So I think it's kind of a very natural fit as well, because I'm part of the development feature. I mean, let's say I need a vault as a secret manager in my platform. And then in tomorrow, there's another developer who want to build a pipeline with Argo CD. If there is another feature that can do it, but typically our platform is actually having a lot of different personas, and it's just not concentrated for the one individual, but it's concentrated around teams need and different people working on the platform need as well. So that kind of very good results as well. So I will include the link so people can see how we actually collected this data and the thing you actually representing now. So we have few times left. We speak about some of the people factor. Now, can you little bit, because this is a very generic question, you and me are a part of the platform working group, we see this comes quite a lot. What can be or should be standardized within platform and engineering teams?
That, I mean, this is like the ultimate questions. What should a platform include? And what we're finding in the data are some very common themes around what people are standardizing. But again, this probably comes with a big caveat that in your organization, you can't just take what someone is doing elsewhere that's very successful and kind of squeeze it into your organization and expect the same levels of success, because platform engineering is really about tailoring what the platform includes to the problems that you have. So that's the big caveat on this one. But what we found, which is quite interesting, is the common focus areas include the things you would expect around a deployment pipeline, things like building, testing, artifact management, deployment automation. So there's that's a common theme of a problem people solve. And then there's like a good grouping of features around infrastructure. So infrastructure automation, transient environments for test teams, one-click project setup. So you can hit a button and you get a repository and a pipeline and like a sample project, and it's already got the key things it needs included, so that you can just start, like, it's almost like the tracer is already there and you can then start building on top of it. And then the other common theme is around security. So secret management, integrating vaults, scanning for security issues, maybe running some security tools like SAST and DAST tools as part of the pipeline. That's another big theme. And what's interesting about these themes is that they tend to be successful when the right combination of things exists in them. So build automation, as an example, isn't that valuable unless there's test automation included in that, because you need that feedback on whether what's been produced by the build is not just compiles, but also still works. So you need those supporting practices. And I think probably a shout out to Dora and their research, which shows that like these practices all have a relationship between them. And with the deployment pipeline side of things, if you don't have monitoring and observability, your confidence to deploy is going to be lower. So that tends to mean that your platform, if it supports deployments but it doesn't bring observability into the picture, your platform won't be rated as highly. So I think it's making sure that you're helping people have not just deployment automation and builds, but the things that complement those and make people more confident to deploy more often, which we all know is, if we put in the right practices to deploy more often, that's when we start having better software delivery performance and better organizational performance. So, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I think like this, you neatly described the combination is very important, because there are some teams who live in the remote world, even though in the COVID is now over, but still there is a remote team working on it. So one team is working on the build part, and the other team is actually coherently responsible for the testing of what that build actually produce is acceptable for the deployment or not. So it's very important those two teams need to be communicated in a way that they actually fine tune what shouldn't be deployed and what should be deployed. And I've seen the scenario where you actually build and test is actually doing wonderful result, and it's telling the right output at the right time, but still things get deployed into the production because developers teams doesn't have their monitoring setup and doesn't have security as code setup or policy as code setup. So it's very importantly, as you mentioned wonderfully well, the combination is very important. And then to talk about the confidence, because if there isn't a monitoring solution in place, I literally have no evidence like what should be happening at the production when this gets deployed as well. But that's a very valuable insight. Thanks for sharing that. Now, the third and final two part I want to learn from you is one is called power and control and performance. So let's talk with the power and control first. How can organization use platform engineering to optimize their cloud spending and performance? Because this is quite really the most concerning point for the organization.
Yeah, I used to work for a consultancy, and we would go into a client's environment, and we would find all kinds of resources they were paying for each month that weren't really being used. So I don't think I've ever come across someone using Azure or AWS or Google Cloud who doesn't have some percentage of things that are costing them money every month that are just not in use. So this is an area I think platform engineering could really help us. If you think in terms of infrastructure automation, if we are creating our infrastructure using infrastructure automation, we can make sure we consistently apply tags to that infrastructure. And we can make sure that we make transient environments actually transient, which means that they get shut down and removed when they're no longer needed, rather than transient in terms of they were used for a week and then we carried on paying for them for a year. So I think that's going to be a key piece of this. In some cases, the platform team might even introduce some tools around cost control that give teams visibility into the cost of their services that are running. I've used tools in the past, some of which don't exist anymore, but you would connect them to your cloud provider and they would show you a breakdown of your costs, and you could choose a more optimal way of hosting some of your infrastructure. So if you had like a virtual machine instance, you could change from, a kind of full virtual machine to a burstable one at the click of a button, and half your cost on that. Like you had those controls, and it would find you like this region would be cheaper or this type of infrastructure would be cheaper. So I suppose a really advanced platform would bring that into the picture. Probably you wouldn't build it from scratch. I think you would look for a tool that did that and then connect it up to make it easy for people to use it. But with the right automation to ensure the tags are there, you should then be able to break that down and show people, this service costs us this much in storage, this much in compute. And then you can work out then where to focus the cost containment kind of exercises.
Absolutely. And I think in the cloud era right now, even though we are in 2024, we need to have only three primitive to whatever we spin up in the cloud: on demand, spot instance, and capacity reservation. And then cloud come into play and said, oh, use our cloud by doing everything you need to stood up in the infrastructure and use our service to monitor the cost and spending. And then people think about it, how in a cloud provider, why they actually help me that my cost will be lower down, because they will happy if my cost is up down. So that's uniquely is not an inherited relation between customers and the cloud. With the advent of the platform engineering, I think that's a one great thing happening is that if you are actually talking about the processes in which the cloud cost visibility is in your core construct. You can see it, you can see why it's happening, when it's happening, and what should I do next to control it, that I don't have to fight with my teams, what's causing the spikes to occur. But let's talk about the last but most important piece as well, is performance. So what metrics should be monitored to ensure that the platform optimal performance, and how does continuous feedback play into it?
Yes. So one of the interesting things we found when we looked at the success factors broken down by the people who build platforms versus the people that consume platforms, we found there's a gap. The people that make platforms think they're more successful than the people using them. And intuitively, I think we can understand why that's going to be, like, hey, we've done a great job building this platform. We think it's awesome. But then the developers are like, it's okay. Like, it's going to happen. So I definitely think user centricity, which is something that's come up in the State of DevOps report in 2023. And the new report is out this month. So we'll probably hear some more about that. User centricity is going to be super important. So I think when you look at the metrics of platform engineering, you need to balance how you measure your success as a team, but also how you measure success for the customers. So at the moment, my recommendation is you have three metrics to measure your platform success in terms of market share. And that's like how many developers in the organization could use our platform, and how many of them do. Onboarding time, and there's a couple of different definitions of onboarding time that you can explore. One is how quickly can a team get onto your platform if they decide they want to use it, because that's going to be a huge barrier to entry because no one's got any time. But also, if someone starts in the organization, how long is it before they can get a change out to production? Or if someone moves between teams, they move from the front end team to the API team, how long before they can get a change into production, getting the code down, making it work. And then this one I always take with a bit of a pinch of salt. Net Promoter Score is one of those metrics that there's a lot of discussion about whether it's perfect or not. And it probably isn't perfect, but it's really useful because it causes you to ask people what they think of your work. And if you change something and you see that score start to drop, it will remind you to have a conversation. What is it that we've just given you that you didn't like? Have we moved something to make it harder for you to use it? Or is something not working as well as it used to? So Net Promoter Score can be useful, not just the number, but the feedback that comes with it and the conversations that you have. So that's the three metrics for you as the platform team: market share, onboarding time, Net Promoter Score. The fourth set of metrics should be metrics that are actually focused on those developers. So I call them key customer metrics. And these will differ based on why your organization decided it needed platform engineering. So if the developers wanted to use your platform because they wanted to increase their software delivery performance, you can measure things like throughput and stability. Or if they needed it because they had a reliability issue specifically, you could measure that. So these will differ, but they should match the reason someone decided to pay for a platform to be built, so that you can check that you're achieving those goals. So that's how I would recommend it's done. You can use other tools like the Space Framework to design the metrics around this. But as a starting point, that's the four that I would recommend.
Absolutely. And I think Steve is the best person for talking about these, one of the most typically hardest problem to solve in the industry right now, measuring the performance of your team and measuring the performance of your customers with the platform as well. And Steve already writes some wonderful article on the internet, so that deserve to be have a full-fledged leading. So there's a link available in your screen, so go check that out, because that's a wonderful article. I love about most around, I think there's the thing we spoke about today is Monk, market share, onboarding time, Net Promoter Score, and key customer metrics as well. And he write a full blog on that as well. But unfortunately, we have to stop the conversation because I have only time for this one. But I really find it very useful. So we are actually been working on something very wonderful, and that's our next 2 to 3 month time deserve to be pay attention if the people are using. So Steve, can you share us, we are working on some white paper, when it will be out, and what is the core primitive of that white paper we're actually working on together?
Yeah, so basically this follows on from the research that Saim and I were doing around why are people adopting platform engineering. What kind of problems are they trying to solve with it? What features are they adding to the platform in order to try and achieve those objectives? And how successful are they being, right? So that we can try and work out how you can be more successful with platform engineering. And this is super important. Saim talked earlier about the kind of hype around platform engineering. As large volumes of people adopt platform engineering, we're going to see problems when they maybe don't do it in the way that we thought platform engineering would be used. And I suppose an example of this is we're finding quite a lot of instances where the platform is mandatory, which is really breaking like one of the 101 rules of platform engineering, is it's supposed to be optional so that you can tell whether or not it's compelling to those developers. So we, after having done the interviews and the questionnaires, we went out, we used an independent market research company so that we could get outside of our bubble to make sure that we're not just speaking to like folks in our circle. And we went out and got responses to a survey. And we're analyzing those at the moment. And that's where some of the charts that we've been talking about today and some of the insights came from. We're going to be writing this up in a report. I don't have a publication date yet. If you followed any of the other research initiatives that are happening, like Dora, they like to be slightly cagey about when it'll be available, because it can take a bit of time. When you start pulling on threads in the data, all kinds of strange things can happen. And we're definitely in that strange things stage. So it will be coming soon, and we will share it far and wide when it's available, so that you can also look into those insights.
Yes, absolutely. And guys, by working with Steve, as I can tell you, there's one of the most organized member in our community. They do it in a very, very organized manner that I really love about it as well. We have been going through for a lot of different community interaction, plus of the company's data as well. So hopefully when it comes out, it's a very solidified experience for the reader, who can actually see, is it a beneficial for me? Do my organization need this kind of initiative? If that, where we are, where we want to be, and in some stages you make some mistakes, and you need to understand it, that these mistake has been happening. And if that somebody tells you upfront, there are some mistakes been happening, and you have some correlated data from the wider organization, I think that's a very good piece for solving a bigger puzzle of the community and the customers for your platform as well. But that's a wonderful. I keep it secret, all these details, but we definitely let you know when will be is going out. But remember, Steve has done already some wonderful research on the internet with the Continuous Delivery Foundation as well. One we already been doing collectively, and one we working with the platform working group as well. So there's a hell of a ride coming through if you wanted to actually follow up Steve. So there's a link header. Go check, follow him on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. So I think his hope is a great conversation point for all the people who wanted to understand people, processes, power, and performance. How those collectively solve via platform engineering. If it is, then how? So hopefully this conversation gave you some initial glimpses of that. And with that, thank you very much for joining listening to the conversation. And as always, great talking to you, Steve. Every time I talk to you, it's been give me a lot of motivator for some of the upcoming work I'm actually planning. So have a wonderful day, everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy.